Hi everyone, so today I am going to go through this painting which I did a few years ago. It's a very nice winter scene painting with lots of different techniques, and there's some lovely techniques on the clothes of the children, as well as some wet and wet techniques with the sky. It's quite simple really. The hard bit is drawing out, so I'll pop a photo on the screen up big of the drawing and one of the actual cards, so you've got those to reference, and then I'll talk through everything as we go through. So I have set up so we've got a bigger view. Whenever I do portrait, it's always hard to get it onto the camera, and if I turn the other way with the camera, it tends to cut off the sides like a short, like it does for a short. So I'm going to try and keep it this way because you get a better view when you're on a larger screen then as well. So I'm going to come firstly into the sky with some water. I'm using Saunders Waterford. It's cotton paper, it's on a block. I'm using a size which is 12 by 9. It's a rough paper, gives me plenty of time. The colours that I'm using are Winsor & Newton. I've got a whole range of colours that I'm using here, and I've just popped some into a palette. So to do that, I've basically dabbed in a few bits of water with my round number 10 and touched into the neat paint and brought this across. So the first colour that I have got is Naples Yellow. Naples Yellow is a opaque colour. It's great for a sunrise or a sunset because it pushes the blue away if you're using a transparent blue. So I'm coming in with a little bit, circular motion, round number 10, a little bit of that colour. And then this is Rose, Permanent Rose. It's one of my favourites, comes a lot into my work. And then I'm just pushing some of this through nicely. I've then got a mix of cobalt blue with a tiny touch of rose. You can see it just very slightly splitting out here. That gives a bit more of a nighttime sort of purple feel, but it's not purple. It's also a great tip that if those two mix, it'll make a grey because it's got a little bit of the rose in. So it's another way of preventing a green in a sky. So I'm just dabbing this on and bringing that through. And then I want a little bit of an aubergine colour. So if I just take a bit of rose here, I'm going to dab into a bit of cobalt blue, so I'm making a purple. And then I have got some burnt sienna. If you haven't got any of these colours, substitute with something that's near it. So at the minute now I've got a sort of purpley grey. I want to make it a little bit more purple. So I'm just taking in a little bit more of the rose. I'm going to drop down to a number 6 because I want to be a little bit more in control with this. And I'm going to come along just pop this colour down towards the bottom. So I'm going to start to get some misty trees. The colour's not strong at this stage. I basically want a little bit of mistiness that I can work over later. And just using the round number 6 means that you're not putting too much paint and it's not flowing too far, so you're not losing that sunset that you've just created. Okay, so now I'm going to come down and get some colour onto the snow. So I'm going to leave a tiny gap in between. I'm going to leave about ½ centimetre so that I don't touch that wet paint that's settling nicely. I'm going to wet over everything. I'm going to basically reflect some colours from the sky into the snow. It's the first start of getting that glow on the snow. So let me move this up. Make sure that your round number 10 is clean before you come back into the Naples yellow. Naples yellow taints very easily, any yellow does, so you need to make sure that it's nice and clean. So I'm going to do some horizontal strokes. You want these colours to be there but not be too strong. And take some of the rose. So I tend to bring the colour warmer towards the front and leave it whiter towards the back. Don't eliminate all of your white. It's really important that you keep some of it. And then I'm just giving that blue mix a stir, and I'm purposely not going to come over any of the yellow, but I'm just going to dab a little bit in because that's going to give a little bit of shadow. So there's very little coming on my brush. I'm avoiding the Naples yellow, but I'm going to take a little bit on this. This gives us soft shadow. So we'll have some soft shadow around the feet. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry now. And I have run out already of this aubergine colour. So this is a rose. The more you mix up, the better you will get at it. So it's always good to keep mixing. That's the cobalt blue gone in, and I've made a purple. And then I'm going to come into some burnt sienna. And it's like a muted aubergine colour. Okay, dab of water. This is my round number 10, so I'm mixing with round number 6. I'm just going to take a little bit of water along that tree line so it's nicely dry. And this is just going to give me time to help this spread a little bit. So what I want now is some harder edges and the softer edges behind. So I'm coming along that bottom edge of the snow. In places, I'm coming all the way to the top. In places, I'm going to let it just soften into the water. So I've wet up to there. So there's somewhere for this to go. And I can take it further. But basically what I want is a combination of hard and soft edges. I'm going to pick up a rigger. And I'm going to twizzle around. So I'm facing this way now because I want to paint out to a point. And I find painting downwards much easier to get a nice point. So this is a winter tree basically, or a winter shrub. I've done a lot of videos recently on winter trees and shrubs. You can just have a few little bits. Just breaking up that line in places. You can see how some of the line has stayed soft because I've wet to there, so it's got somewhere to go and it's just stayed at the bottom. It's really nice to have a combination of hard and soft edges. Gives a much better sense of depth and distance. There we go. And I've also here got a little bit, so this is my round number 6. I'm coming in with that same colour. I'm going to twizzle around some grassy bits basically. Just pop a few bits of grassiness in. If I rinse my number 6 off, dab it into some water, I'm just going to touch either side, so that's going to help to soften and ground that in just by touching either side. I've got some sepia on my palette as well, and just to make this a little bit stronger, I'm just going to take a dab of that sepia in. That was just neat sepia, and I can flick some of that through. Combination of darker grassy bits and lighter ones. Okay, so I'm going to come down to the little boy first. I've got about 100 lines here. This is how I draw. I sketch, I draw again, I draw again until I think it's right, and then I come to paint and I have to choose a line. And I never really like to rub them out because then you get to see my process of drawing. So I've wet the coat over, and I'm going to come in first of all with a little bit of rose, which will sound mad, but it's going to give a really nice glow to the coat. Now I need a dark colour, so you can get a dark colour by squirting it out of a tube, or you can get a dark colour by mixing. So if I take a little bit of ultramarine blue and a little bit of burnt sienna, or any sort of dark blue and brown, as long as it's not phthalo will make a lovely dark colour. So this is a near on black look. And the difference you've got is you get some split out. So when it's wet in wet, you get some difference in tone from the paint that you're mixing. So it's always nice to learn how to mix colours. It's always nice to have an easy option as well, but it's nice to mix colours. So I'm coming along the coat. It's still nice and wet, so I've got plenty of time. I've chosen an edge and committed to that edge. And what I want is that glow to just be there, slightly visible on the back of the coat. So it's just a case of flowing the paint on. So I've just got that little bit of a glow. Get as nice a edge as you can up to the little girl, because that is going to be the edge of her coat. So you've got that really nice sort of nighttime glow there. Then if I continue down the legs, so I've dabbed on a little bit of water. And then this is the blue that I've used in the sky. I'm just bringing that down one side of jeans. And I can just let it flow across. With a damp brush, if I want to control it a little bit, I can just pull out some of the water. When you're popping it in wet, sometimes it can be a little bit too wet, so it's always good to be able to control it a little bit. If I use a little bit of the grey, I'm just going to pop a bit of shadow on the bottom of the shoe. So that's gone on to dry. A damp brush, I'm just softening that in. You actually don't need a huge amount of detail for it to hold together. If you want an edge to be darker, it's just a case of waiting a little bit and then popping that edge in darker. So you've got a darker and a lighter edge. It's quite nice when they all flow together. It's a really nice effect. I'm actually going to put a glove on in the blue. So that's just a little line, and I'm just going to soften in there just so that it's got a bit of a glove happening. So we're going to come to the hat now. I'm just going to pick up my round number 10. Just take a little bit of water onto this hat. I'm going to pop some rose in. So the water's just giving us time to do what we need to do. Pom-pom on the top. So we've got a really flat colour there. If I dip into some neater rose, I can bring it darker one side and darker at the bottom. Rinsing my brush out, I'm now going to dip into some neat Naples yellow. So Naples yellow is opaque, so if we want to pop some spots on the hat, you can just do that with a bit of neat Naples yellow, and that will cover and go through. Now, on this little girl's coat, there is lots and lots of different coloured spots. I haven't drawn out any spots. I'm just going to paint them straight on. So the first colour that I've picked up is cerulean blue. I'm just going to paint them on dry. What I'm trying to show you is all the different combinations you can do when you're painting. It doesn't have to all be wet in wet. You can pick some bits to do dry. In fact, whilst that cerulean blue is on my brush, I'm going to use this on her little jeans, and I'm popping the lines in where they're creased, and then with a wet brush or a damp brush, I'm just going to soften in between. So just taking a little bit of water and those jeans will appear. So I have got some alizarin crimson spots now. We'll just take a few different coloured spots on. Some of them don't even have to be spots, they can be half spots or dabs. It's just about getting an impression on here. I've got some cadmium orange on my palette, so we'll just use a little bit of that just to create a few spots. And I've got a little bit of neat cobalt blue, so a different blue, just to create a few more spots or dabs. So if I come down to the wellies, I'm going to paint the base on each welly. And then there's some speckles. So I've dabbed some speckles on with some rose and some Naples yellow. So all of this I'm doing on to dry, but I'm going to show you how to create the shadow at the end to bring this together. If I wanted to highlight a bit on the hat now, so this is still damp, but it's now at a point where I can lift a little bit. So with a dry brush, I can lift some highlights out. So you can have a lighter side and a darker side. The brush has to be dry, otherwise it'll just watermark it. So you just got to keep your kitchen towel there ready to dry it off. Okay, so we've got some little gloves. So this again is the rose. Just check that's dry enough here. A little bit of a glove there. Okay, so I'm going to dry this off and then I'll come back. Okay, so that's dried off and now I can just come on and paint the bits in between for the coat. So again, this is rose. You can keep it quite pale or you can go stronger. I have got some alizarin crimson just in my palette, and if I come onto the edges then it does help to give a little bit of shadow. Concentrating on that right hand side. I'll come back into the rose. You actually don't need to be too precise, and you can leave odd bits of white, it just tends to work. And then when you get to this stage again, if you just get a darker red, I'm just thinking about where the shadow might be. So I'll pop a little bit underneath the hood, a little bit down the arm, the inside of the arm. A little bit down this inside of that arm. A little bit on that glove. All these little bits help create that sense of shadow. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the snow now, and I'm going to make sure that this mix is nice and watery. We're going to put some harder shadow on. So we've got some soft shadow. We now need some harder shadow. So you can see how watery this mix is. I'm going to come in and just create some harder bits. So this is going to give a sense of definition, a sense of distance, a sense of footprints and depth. This is random dabbing with a number 6. Random is one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do. And it's just trying to think random. You can't not think because you end up painting a pattern. You've got to think all the time, does this work? Do I need to change the direction, the angle, the pressure of the brush? All of those things help. So I can create some what could be possible footprints, patterns, but not too much pattern. It sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but footprints are a pattern, whereas everything else is a bit more random. The footprints need to go somewhere, they need to be a certain size. So you'll see that I'm varying the angle of my brush all the time, varying the pressure of my brush. All of these things help you to create random. So I might paint one that way, one this way. It's just all thinking about random. I need to get some shadow to start to ground here, and we know that the light's coming this way, so we can pop the shadow this way. And that's going to help them stay on the surface. A few more random bits. With my round number 10 and some clean water, I'm going to soften a few bits in. So this is just a wet brush or a damp brush, and I'm just selecting an odd bit and I'm softening that bit in. So already now this is looking pretty lovely. I've got some sepia and I'm just gonna pop a little bit under the feet just so it helps to emphasize that they're grounded there. If I just, with a damp brush, this is pretty much dried now, just pull that out into the shadow, it's just going to help with that little bit. That little bit of extra dark brings them forward. The boldness of the clothes brings them forward. Now, in the original photograph there was quite a lot of melting snow, so what I would class as muddy bits. I'm not going to put as much in. I'm going to do a few so you know what to do where the grasses are basically coming through. So we're going to pop a few in. So damp brush, we're just going to soften these in. At the bottoms. Then I'm going to twizzle round, take my rigger, and I'm just going to pull out some of the paint so that I start to get a grassy effect. I don't want it to be too dark. This gives you a lovely sort of grassy, muddy effect. Different angles again, different heights. Everything needs to say random. And there we go, we've got some grassy bits. I'm just going to dry this one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry now, and I've come in close up so you can see how I'm applying the shadow. So I want to basically apply some hard shadow now to the figures. I'm going to start with a bit of rose and bring that down one side, just underneath. It's about choosing the most appropriate colour at that point. And we're painting over the spots because we're popping shadow in now. If it's not dark enough, then choose something that's a bit darker. So this is the colour that we've used, the aubergine colour. So I've just taken a little bit of that in, just to help to emphasise the coat. I'll stick with that aubergine colour and come down the sides of the legs. This is the important bit that's going to hold it all together now. It always seems a little bit flat at one point, and then it's about getting the shadow right. Down the sides of each of the wellies, leaving a tiny bit of light on the top. And if I come down the jeans, nice and dark in here. Little bit onto the trainers. Just going to wet just down either side here, just to soften that in a little bit. I don't want all of it to be hard shadow. And then I'm coming back into that grey of the coat that I've made. I'm going to pop a bit more dark on. So we come down this side, down this side, so we're bringing out that arm a little bit, down this side. I'm going to take a little bit more on the arm here as well. It's a bit too glowy for me, this. It's just about adjusting now. And everything's starting now to feel like it's shadowed. You've got light and dark sides. Okay, so if I come back out, And then the last thing really is if you want to add any more random. So I'm gonna just into a bit of the snow sort of shadow colour and just add a few speckles. So I'm just, this is called throwing the paint. So I'm basically hitting my finger with a loaded brush and adding a few speckles in. Now it does tend to go far. I've got ones right the way up here. But then this is giving you a place of random shadow. So then I can just touch in places and soften those in. Again, it's all more about texture and randomness. So I want to leave some of this into the foreground, and the stuff that's splattered into the background I've softened in more. So it's just everything's adding a little bit more of a dimension there. Okay, so I'll dry this off and pop a mount on. Okay, so there we go. So it's all finished, and a mount on that. It looks really, really pretty. It's a really atmospheric way to do snow and to capture figures in the snow. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe and share. I'll pop you another video here and a playlist here, and I'll see you next time.